Reports started emerging last week that Doctor Who Series 13 would be recording in the coming months, towards the end of 2020. But interestingly, only Jodie Whittaker and Mandip Gill's names were mentioned in that report. No Bradley Walsh, no Tosin Cole. This leads credence to the rumour that we've heard for a little while now that both Bradley and Tosin may be leaving at the end of the Christmas special, the winter special this year. It has long been speculated. Does this confirm it? It's not an official confirmation, but it certainly adds some weight to that rumour. If the two do depart and Yaz stays on, that leaves really two possibilities. Either we get some new companions to join Yaz and the Doctor on their travels, or it's just the two of them. But what would that be like? Would it be a delight or a disaster? Let's discuss. Hi, I'm Phil, welcome to my channel where I like to talk a lot about Doctor Who as well as other geeky pop culture topics, so if that's your thing, do hit that like button, the subscribe button, all of that jazz. Oh, and if you are into Doctor Who and want to keep up on what's happening in the Time Lord Victorious event that is going on at the moment, don't forget to check out my canon update videos that are out every weekend that there has been something released in that event. So far, the first one of those is out, so do check that out to cover the first week of releases. It gives a basic guide of how each of the things that have been released so far intersect with the whole event. So if you're not getting everything in the events, you can pick up what's happening in the bits you're not getting. Now onto this particular topic and how the show would be if it was just Yaz and the Doctor. Would that be a good thing? Would that be a bad thing? What might it look like? Let's talk about it. I think there are some positives and some negatives to this. And as everything, it will depend on the stories we get involving it. But this is what I see as potentially one of the positives. We, so far, have not had the best character development for Yaz. She's been a bit left by the wayside. She got a little bit towards the end of Series 12, but overall, she hasn't had much. This would be a chance to properly delve in, to focus on her, and to develop her properly. She has effectively a really potentially interesting unfulfilled arc that was hinted at way back in the very first episode of Jodie Whittaker's run. She started that series as a police officer who is a little bit disillusioned with her work. She wanted to do more. She wanted to do more important things with her police work, but she was assigned to domestics and traffic and fairly low-level things which she felt were not indicative of her talents. She felt wasted. And that was really good setup for an arc that never really came. We never really saw the fulfillment of that arc. It was about a season and a half before it was even touched on again. In fact, her police work barely got mentioned in her first series, and even in Series 2, it was kind of only tangentially touched on until we got to Can You Hear Me? There we got to see where the motivation to make a change in people's lives really came from. At a very low point in Yaz's life, she was helped by a police officer, a single police officer, which really changed her life and motivated and inspired her to then go on and join the police service herself. And that was really good. It was the first bit of story we had that kind of tied into Yaz's arc at all, really. And it had just taken so long to get there, which was really frustrating because we'd had a year and a half almost of her not being developed at all, and then we get this development, which was great to have, a little bit too late. We did also get bits of Yaz's character development towards the end of the season where she started to take a more proactive role in the TARDIS team. She started to make decisions on her own without the Doctor. She started to go off and confront the Doctor in some instances and challenge the Doctor a lot more than she had done in the previous series. That was all towards the end of Series 12 though, and again, it just was a little bit late. But we did start to get that, and that it kind of feels like we've had both the beginning and the middle of an arc for her, but we haven't gotten to the end of it yet. This potential arc that is sitting there waiting to be properly explored has sort of had its first and second act, but not its third act. We'll talk more fully about where her arc could go towards the end of the video, in how the series might look if it was just the two of them. But one potential endpoint could be that she finds her calling out there in the galaxy, away from Earth. A new calling that feels that she needs to stay behind and embrace. Maybe some kind of intergalactic peace service, or some other kind of in one place mission where she chooses to leave the Doctor's side and stay there because that's where she feels most fulfilled. Now, on the negatives of this, is it just too late for Yaz? Have we left it too long to develop her? Like I said earlier, we had a big gap of sort of from the first hints of her story arc in that very first episode. We then didn't get anything for a year and a half. Has it been too late? Would completing that arc now feel like something that's just been tacked on to the end because the setup isn't there for it? I mean, the initial setup is there in that very first episode, but the fact that it hasn't been developed that much since, will it feel odd looking at it as a whole arc? Is it too late? That is certainly a possibility, that we will look back on Yaz's arc and it will still feel unsatisfying, even if they do spend the whole season focusing on her, simply because they took too long. But, even though that's a possibility, both Graham and Yaz have had their full arcs. In fact, they kind of completed their arcs in the first series of Jodie Whittaker's run. The arc of getting over their grief of Grace's death, their arc of coming to accept each other, particularly Ryan's acceptance of Graham as his granddad. That was a lovely arc, and Ryan was kind of a bit of a loose end. I feel like Graham still had some more to do. He had his worry about the cancer coming back. That was interesting. But Ryan didn't really have a personal arc in Series 12. But he had had one the year before, and it had been completed. Graham, similarly, has had a completed arc. Yaz hasn't, and I think because of that, I think we need that, even though when we look at it as a whole, it won't be the best executed plan as a 3-year arc, but at least she'll get to complete it. Another positive of it just being the Doctor and Yaz is that we will have a less crowded TARDIS team. I've been a big supporter of bigger TARDIS teams in the past. I got a little bit bored of the 2-person dynamic that we got in the Russell T Davies era, throughout the Russell T Davies era, and I really, really liked the 3-person dynamic that we got through a lot of the Stephen Moffat era, whether or not that was the Dr. Amy and Rory or the Dr. Bill and Nardole. I liked that 3-person dynamic. But given, and I was very keen for the 4-person dynamic that we would getting here. I'm a big fan of the Hartnell era as well, and that was a 4-person dynamic as well. But the Hartnell era had longer to tell its story, and therefore, with 6-episode serials, it gave the time to focus on each character in good enough time. Potentially, this just hasn't, and certainly some episodes have done it okay, but a lot of the episodes have felt very crammed in, like they're fitting too much into one episode because they feel like they have to carry every single character and focus somewhat on every single character. And it can't be denied that when you have less characters, you have the ability to focus more on each one as an individual. Boiling it back down to 2 people could absolutely focus the story, focus the energy, and not have so much filler in there, because I think a lot of the time, in order to create something for each of the characters to do, we have ended up with filler some of the time in some of the episodes. So to remove that might be a good thing. And one final negative on this, I would say, is that it's kind of a dynamic we've had before. And what I'm looking for with companion-doctor relationships is each time to get a completely new dynamic, so that we're not retreading old ground. And the Russell T Davies era, even though it did keep 2 companions and that got a little boring at the end, at least the companion had a different dynamic with the Doctor each time, which was good. This one, what we'd effectively end up with if it was the Doctor and Yaz would be a team where they had been travelling as more than just the 2 of them and had gone back to just the 2 of them, which in one respect is a bit of a repeated dynamic in the modern era. What do I mean? Well, I'm talking about when the Doctor and Rose were travelling with Jack. Now, for us as the audience, it was a very short time, only a couple of episodes. But for them, in character, they'd been on many adventures we hadn't seen, and there's more of them in the books and the comics, of course, but even within the show, it's implied and said that they had been on lots of adventures together and had been this team. And then we're thrown into a situation immediately for Series 2 where it's back to just 2 of them again, and, it's, even though it's not touched on very much, there's that dynamic where they were more a bigger team and now they're less. It would be slightly different, I guess, because of course Jack was a very different type of companion. You had the romantic angle that between the Doctor and Rose that it doesn't exist there with Yaz and the Doctor. Well, I mean, who knows? But I know there are people that ship them. We'll come to that in a minute. But I don't know. It feels like it might be treading on ground that they've done before. Whereas having a new companion, a brand new companion, join them, we would have a dynamic that we certainly got often in the classic era, which is that a veteran companion is dealing with having a rookie companion on the TARDIS team. Yaz would be a kind of mentor, especially if the new companion was younger. Maybe someone who's like 17, 18. I'm thinking maybe the young guy that was in the final episode of Series 12 that was on the ship with them. Maybe he could be a potential companion. That might be in a more interesting dynamic, something that we haven't explored in the modern era before. I think I would prefer to see that, but I do think just the two of them might work as well. I suppose in a way, actually, this just came to my head, but actually, we have kind of had that dynamic already before, but again, it was with Rose and Adam, and it was such a short period of time when we as the audience knew them. I suppose similar to us knowing Jack as part of the TARDIS team, that it doesn't feel like it's been explored fully because it was such a short, brief period of time. So given those positives and negatives, what would it actually be like? What might we see if we get Yaz and the Doctor just together again, by themselves, no other companions? Given the very personal nature of Chris Chibnall's writing, the fact that he likes to deal with repercussions on sort of emotional levels, I think we probably would get at least 1 or 2 episodes of them dealing with the loss, even if they were alive and had just chosen to leave the TARDIS, dealing with that kind of feeling of a missing part of the unit. We'd get at least 1 or 2 episodes that deal with that, I think, given Chris Chibnall's track record of writing characters. We'd see them having to rely on each other a lot more as well, in the stories and on an emotional level as well. Now, assuming that Yaz doesn't die at the end of Series 13, I think it would be important to start sowing the seeds of why she might end up leaving. And as I said earlier, I think a really good fulfillment of her arc might be something where she ends up leaving because she's found a higher purpose, something that she feels really fulfilled doing, that she can take charge of, that she doesn't have to do under the Doctor's shadow, that it's her own thing, but she feels she's helping people. So we should get some reference back to her early, very first episode where she's disillusioned with her police work. Maybe pepper that in throughout the first few episodes, or first half of the series. Perhaps even they could have an early episode in Sheffield where she goes back to work, because I think how they explained the fact that she was missing in Series 12 a lot was that the Doctor had done some paperwork trickery and she was on secondment or something like that. But maybe she goes back, does a little bit of work in Sheffield again, and feels that disillusion once more. Maybe even some of her colleagues can find out about her adventures in space. Maybe they can see her help the Doctor defeat some kind of alien presence in the city, but while she's very much doing her police work. And yet, even then, because of the bureaucracy of the police or whatever, she's still the rank she is. She still has to do the work she is. And even though she has proven herself in front of them that she can defeat alien threats even, they still get her attending domestics. Maybe that is the point where she hands in her badge, hands in her commission, and just goes, I'm done with the police. I'm going out into the universe. I'm going to find my calling there. Then over several episodes, maybe we can see that even this isn't bringing her the satisfaction that she wants. Travelling with the Doctor, maybe the fact that she's under the Doctor's shadow all the time just doesn't quite work for her, and she starts to butt heads with the Doctor a little bit more on ways of doing things, potentially. And maybe she feels like the Doctor just abandons people really quickly after solving the big threat, that the Doctor, she doesn't gel well with the fact that the Doctor then goes, right, it's time to leave, we don't stick around. We know that of the Doctor, but maybe Yaz wants to stick around and help people because she knows that period afterwards, people need help. She knows this from experience. Whatever caused her to be depressed or wanting to run away from home and wanting to do whatever she was going to do when that police woman found her. Whatever that event was had been in the past, and she was now just dealing with the emotional repercussions of it. And it was only because that police officer was there at the right time then to help her that she survived, that she moved past it and went on to join the police herself. So maybe she feels they should stick around a lot more. So maybe come the end of the season, she finds a place where she feels she can really help. She can stay, she can do that after work. You know, they may do the big saving of the day there, but then she wants to stick around and really, really help the people that need it after the event. That's, of course, just one idea. You may have your own of how her arc should go. Do let me know in the comments below what your own ideas are of how her arc could go if we do just get a Dr. Yaz dynamic. As for my initial question, delight or disaster? Honestly, I mean, it has the potential to go either way. It really depends on how well whatever arc they decide to go with is handled. I think there's potential for it. I mean, Chris Chibnall has shown that he can do the emotional stuff quite well. Him and Ryan's personal arcs were really good in that season. And if he can do something similar with Yaz's arc in this, I think it has the potential to delight. It will never look amazing if you look at it over a whole 3-season arc because of the gap in the middle where there just wasn't much going on for Yaz. But if he pulls it off at the end here, it could be worthwhile. Or maybe we get a blend of the two. Maybe we get the first half of the season with the Doctor just travelling with Yaz, and then we get that third companion come in halfway through the season who can then carry on the mantle of companion afterwards. So we get a bit of both worlds. Maybe we get, the Yaz and Doctor, the focus on Yaz really strongly at the beginning of the season, and her arc continuing to the end like I had just envisioned it. But we also get the new companion, the dynamic of veteran and rookie companion in there, and we get someone to carry on with Jodie Whittaker potentially into season 14 as well, series 14 as well. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm Phil. I will be here for more Doctor Who videos soon. I've just got the new, I don't have it on me, but I just got the new Doctor Who magazine, which has Time Lord Victorious comic in it, so I will be covering that on my next Time Lord Victorious canon update, which should theoretically be out this weekend at some point, if I can get it done in time. So do subscribe, like, share, all that jazz, if that sounds interesting to you, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.